The fluorescent lights in the 14th floor hallway flickered as Noah Carter gripped the summons letter so hard his knuckles turned white. His son's face flashed through his mind, those 7-year-old eyes that still waited for Mom to come home. This was it. The CEO herself wanted to see him. Nobody got called to Adrian Vale's office unless they were being fired, and Noah knew exactly why. 3 late projects, 2 missed deadlines. One exhausted single father who couldn't keep his head above water anymore. But here's what you need to know. If you enjoy this story, hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this journey reaches. Now, let's dive in. Noah's hand trembled as he pushed through the glass doors of the executive suite. The receptionist didn't look up. She just pointed down the hall with one manicured nail, her phone pressed against her ear. Her voice was sugar sweet for whoever was on the other end, the kind of pleasant that never got directed at people like him. He'd been working at MedTech Innovations for 4 years. 4 years of keeping his head down, doing the work, staying invisible. That strategy had gotten him exactly nowhere, but it had kept him employed, and employment meant health insurance for Ethan, groceries, rent on their cramped apartment in a neighborhood that was 2 steps above terrible. The hallway stretched impossibly long. Contemporary art hung on the walls, abstract pieces that probably cost more than his annual salary. His reflection caught in the polished surface of a massive photograph. A man who looked older than 32, shoulders hunched, suit jacket that didn't quite fit right because he'd bought it 6 years ago when he still had hope. When Sarah was still alive. He shoved that thought down hard. Couldn't go there, not now. The door at the end of the hall stood partially open. Through the gap, he could see floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, the kind of view that reminded you exactly how small you were. Noah stopped outside, took a breath that didn't steady him at all, and knocked. "Come in." The voice was cool, precise. He'd heard it before in company-wide meetings, that measured tone that never revealed emotion. Adrienne Vale wasn't someone you had casual conversations with. She was someone you read about in business journals, someone whose photograph appeared next to words like disruptor and visionary and ruthless. He stepped inside. The office was enormous. Minimalist design, everything in shades of white and chrome, and that particular type of gray that cost extra. Adrienne sat behind a desk that looked like a piece of modern sculpture, her attention fixed on 3 monitors arranged in an arc. She didn't look up right away, and Noah stood there feeling like a kid called to the principal's office, which was probably the point. "Sit down, Mr. Carter." He sat in one of the leather chairs facing her desk. It was lower than hers, another power play he recognized but couldn't do anything about. Adrienne finally looked at him. She was younger than he'd expected. Late 30s, maybe 40. Sharp features, dark hair pulled back severely, eyes that took you apart piece by piece. No makeup, no jewelry, except a watch that probably cost more than his car. She wore a charcoal suit that looked like it had been tailored specifically for intimidation. "Do you know why you're here?" Noah's throat felt dry. "I can guess? Can you?" It wasn't a question. She touched something on her keyboard, and one of the monitors rotated toward him. His performance reviews filled the screen. Red marks everywhere. 3 missed deadlines in the last quarter. 2 projects that had to be reassigned. Your team lead says you're distracted, unreliable, and barely meeting minimum standards. Each word landed like a punch. Noah tried to find something to say, some defense, but what was the point? It was all true. "I know I've been... Let me finish." Adrienne's voice didn't rise, but something in it made him shut up immediately. "Your direct supervisor recommended termination 6 weeks ago. HR agreed. I've been sitting on the paperwork since then." 6 weeks. He'd been a dead man walking for 6 weeks and hadn't even known it. "I should fire you," Adrienne continued, her eyes locked on his. "Any rational CEO would. You're a liability. Your performance metrics are garbage. You're costing this company money." Noah felt something inside him crumble. This was it. End of the line. He'd have to tell Ethan they were moving again, maybe back to his mom's place in Ohio, where the pity would be thick enough to choke on and the job prospects were non-existent. "But I'm not going to." The words took a second to register. Noah blinked. "What?" Adrienne leaned back in her chair, fingers steepled in front of her. "I know about your son, Mr. Carter. Ethan. 7 years old, diagnosed with mild asthma, requires an inhaler, Sees Dr. Patricia Morrison at Children's Hospital every 3 months. Ice flooded Noah's veins. How do you... I know you bring him to the office after hours when you can't afford a sitter. I know he does his homework in the break room on the 14th floor while you finish work you couldn't complete during the day because you're exhausted. She paused. I know your wife died 2 years ago. Pulmonary embolism. Sudden, unexpected, catastrophic. Noah couldn't breathe. This wasn't happening. I know, Adrienne continued, each word precise as a scalpel, that you worked on a medical AI diagnostic system during your PhD program at Stanford. Brilliant work, according to your published research. A system designed to catch exactly the kind of condition that killed your wife. The room tilted. Noah gripped the arms of his chair. I know you abandoned that research after she died. Dropped out of the program 3 months before defending your dissertation. Took the first industry job you could find because you needed immediate income and health insurance. Stop. The word came out strangled. Just stop. Adrienne did stop, but her gaze didn't soften. If anything, it sharpened. Why? Noah managed. Why do you know all of this? Because 3 years ago, this company acquired the research program you abandoned. Because I've spent the last 18 months rebuilding that system with a team of 30 engineers and $200 million in funding. Because that system went live in 4 hospitals last month, and it's already saved 17 lives. She leaned forward. And because the man who designed the original architecture is currently working in my building as a mid-level data analyst, doing work a talented undergraduate could manage, while the thing he created is changing medicine. Noah couldn't process this, couldn't make it make sense. The Sentinel system, Adrienne said. That's what we call it now. Your original code is still at its core, modified, expanded, but fundamentally yours. I don't understand what you want from me. Don't you? Adrienne pulled up something else on her screen. 3 weeks ago, our system flagged a patient at Mercy General. 41-year-old woman came in complaining of leg pain. Standard protocol would have sent her home with anti-inflammatories. The Sentinel system caught markers in her blood work that suggested potential embolism formation. They did a scan, found 3 clots. One was already moving toward her lungs. The room felt airless. Her name was Jennifer, Adrienne continued quietly. She has 2 kids, 8 and 5. Because of your work, the foundation you laid, she went home to them. Noah's vision blurred. He pressed the heels of his hands against his eyes, fighting for control. Mr. Carter, Noah, just call me Noah. Noah. Adrienne's voice lost some of its edge. I need you to lead this project. He dropped his hands, stared at her. What? The Sentinel system is working, but we're only at 20% of what it could be. We're catching obvious cases, but we're missing subtle ones. The team is brilliant, but they don't think like you do. They don't see the patterns the way you would. They're engineers following blueprints. You were creating something alive. I can't. The words came automatically. I haven't done that kind of work in years. I wouldn't even know where to start. Yes, you would. It's still in there. Adrienne tapped her temple. I've read your published papers. I've seen the notes you scribbled in margins, the leaps of logic that shouldn't work but do. That doesn't just disappear. You don't understand. After Sarah died, I couldn't. Every time I looked at that code, all I could see was how I failed. How if I'd been faster, smarter, better, maybe the system would have been ready. Maybe she'd still be... Stop! Adrienne's voice cut through his spiral. Your wife's death wasn't your fault. No early-stage research project could have saved her. The timeline doesn't work. Even if you'd finished your PhD and pushed for implementation immediately, it would have taken years to get through trials and regulatory approval. You don't know that. I do know that, because I've spent 18 months navigating exactly that process, and I had infinite more resources than a PhD student. She paused. But I also know that guilt doesn't care about logic. Something in the way she said it made Noah look at her more carefully. There was something under the ice, he realized. Something personal. 3 years ago, Adrienne said slowly, my sister collapsed at her daughter's soccer game. Brain aneurysm. She was 37. The kind of thing that shows warning signs if you know what to look for, but most doctors don't catch it until it's too late. Noah felt his anger deflate. I can't bring her back, Adrienne continued. Neither of us can bring back the people we lost, but we can make sure other people don't lose theirs. That's what this is about. Not redemption, not closure, just the math of preventing unnecessary death. The silence stretched between them. I can't do it, Noah said finally. Even if I wanted to, I have Ethan. He needs consistency, stability. I can't take on something that massive and still be the parent he deserves. So bring him. Noah blinked. What? Bring him. We'll set up proper childcare on site. There's a room on the 16th floor that's been sitting empty. Turn it into whatever he needs. Homework space, play area, I don't care. Hire someone to supervise when you're in meetings. Put it on the company budget. That's not... Companies don't do that. This company does if it means getting the right person for the job. Adrian's expression was unreadable. I'm offering you director-level compensation. Full benefits, signing bonus, stock options. More importantly, I'm offering you the resources to finish what you started, to make the thing you dreamed about real. Why me? You could hire someone better, someone who hasn't spent 2 years barely functional. Because the team I have is good at following instructions, but they're not good at reimagining systems. They need someone who understands the work at a fundamental level, who can see what it could become. She paused. And because 17 people are alive today because of work you did half a decade ago when you were a broke graduate student. Imagine what you could do with a real budget and a real team. Noah thought about Ethan, about the cramped apartment with the leaky faucet he kept meaning to fix, about working late nights after his son was asleep, trying to catch up on projects that didn't matter, work that would be forgotten as soon as it was done. He thought about Jennifer, 2 kids, 8 and 5, who still had their mother. I need to think about it. No. He looked up sharply. I need an answer now, Adrian said. Not because I'm trying to pressure you, but because if you say no, I need to move forward with other options. This project is too important to wait. That's not fair. Fair doesn't enter into it. I'm asking you to make a choice. Keep doing work that doesn't challenge you, that you're barely managing to complete, that will lead inevitably to termination. You said you weren't going to fire me. I said I'm not going to fire you today, but your supervisor will recommend it again next quarter and the quarter after that, and eventually the board will force my hand. You know how this ends. She leaned forward. Or you can take a risk. Step into something that terrifies you. Use the thing that broke you to build something that matters. Noah's heart hammered against his ribs. I want to see it, he heard himself say. The system. I want to see what you've built. Adrian's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes that might have been satisfaction. Follow me. The lab was 2 floors down, accessible only by a private elevator that required Adrian's keycard and a biometric scan. As they descended, Noah's mind raced. This was insane. He wasn't qualified for this. He hadn't published research in years. He'd let his skills atrophy, let himself become exactly the kind of mediocre professional he'd sworn he'd never be. But underneath the fear, something else stirred. Something that felt dangerously like hope. The elevator doors opened onto a space that looked nothing like the sterile corporate environment upstairs. This was pure research facility, workstations everywhere, monitors displaying cascading data, whiteboards covered in equations and diagrams. At least 20 people were scattered throughout the room, some clustered around terminals, others in heated discussion. Nobody looked up when they entered. They were too absorbed. Adrian walked him through without stopping, heading toward a glass-walled conference room at the back. Inside, a massive display covered one entire wall, showing what looked like a neural network map, branches spreading and connecting in impossibly complex patterns. This is the current iteration, Adrian said, pulling up additional screens with a gesture. We've integrated it with the electronic health record systems at our pilot hospitals. Every patient admission triggers an analysis. The system looks at vital signs, lab values, patient history, medication lists, anything that might indicate developing complications. Noah stepped closer, his trained eye picking apart the architecture. It was his work. He could see that immediately. The fundamental logic was what he'd designed, but they'd expanded it in ways he'd never imagined. How's the false positive rate? 14%, a voice said from behind him. Noah turned. A woman in her 50s stood in the doorway, gray hair pulled into a messy bun, coffee mug in hand. She wore a Stanford hoodie and looked like she hadn't slept in a week. Dr. Rachel Kim, Adrian introduced. She's been leading development. Your architecture is beautiful, Rachel said, walking over to shake his hand, but it's also a pain in the ass. Every time we try to reduce the false positives, we risk missing the edge cases. Every time we tune it for sensitivity, we get alarm fatigue. That was always the problem, Noah said quietly. The balance. Right, and we've hit a wall. We can get it better, but we can't get it great. Not without someone who understands the original design philosophy. Noah studied the display. You're using ensemble learning here. Had to. Single model approach wasn't catching enough variation. But ensemble creates lag. If you're running multiple models in parallel, we get a 17-second delay on critical alerts, which is 17 seconds too long. Noah's mind was already working through possibilities. What if you restructured the decision tree? Instead of running parallel models, create a hierarchical system. Fast screening layer that catches obvious cases immediately, deeper analysis only for ambiguous presentations. Rachel's eyes lit up. That could work. We'd need to redesign the alert prioritization, color-coded tiers, red for immediate intervention, yellow for monitor closely, green for standard protocol. Doctors hate color codes, they ignore them. So make the alerts contextual, integrate them directly into workflow, pop-up that blocks the discharge order until the attending reviews the flag. Rachel paused. That's actually smart. Annoying as hell for the doctors, but smart. Adrienne watched their exchange with an expression Noah couldn't read. Show me the false positive cases, he said, the ones where the system flagged something, but there was no real danger. Rachel pulled up a file. Last week we had 47 false alarms, sent teams running for conditions that didn't exist. Noah scrolled through the data, his rusty skills slowly coming back online. Here, this patient, 62-year-old male, flagged for potential cardiac event. But look at his medication list. He's on a beta blocker that artificially lowers heart rate. The system interpreted that as bradycardia. We tried to code in medication interactions. You can't just code them in. There are too many combinations. You need the system to learn patterns. Actual machine learning, not just rule-based logic. He pulled up another case. This one, post-surgical patient flagged for sepsis. But she just had orthopedic surgery. Elevated inflammatory markers are expected. The system needs to understand context. How? Temporal patterns? Track the expected trajectory for specific procedure types. Deviation from expected curve triggers the alert, not absolute values. Rachel was typing furiously. That would require rebuilding the core inference engine. Yeah, it would. That's months of work. Probably. Rachel looked at Adrienne, then back at Noah. When can you start? The question hit him like cold water. This wasn't theoretical anymore. They were treating him like he'd already said yes. I need to think. Stop thinking. Adrienne's voice cut through his hesitation. You're already doing the work in your head. I can see it. What's holding you back? Noah turned to face her. What if I fail? What if I take this on and I can't deliver? What if people die because I missed something, because I wasn't good enough? People die every day in hospitals, Adrienne said bluntly, from conditions we could have caught if we were paying closer attention. You can't save everyone. The question is whether you're willing to save anyone. That's not fair. I'm not interested in fair. I'm interested in results. She moved closer. You're standing here looking at this system, your system, and you're already seeing ways to make it better. You did that in 5 minutes. Imagine what you could do with 5 months, 5 years. Noah looked back at the display, at the web of connections and possibilities. He thought about Sarah, about the moment he'd gotten the call from the hospital, how the doctor had explained that sometimes these things just happened. Nothing anyone could have done differently. He thought about Jennifer, the woman he'd never met, who was alive today because of code he'd written in a coffee shop during his second year of graduate school. He thought about Ethan, who needed a father who was present and capable, not this exhausted ghost he'd become. If I do this, Noah said slowly, I need guarantees. Ethan comes first, always. If he needs me, I leave. No questions, no consequences. Agreed. I need autonomy. I'm not going to spend my time in meetings defending every decision to people who don't understand the work. You'll report directly to me. Nobody else. And he paused. I need to know this is real, that you're actually committed to doing this right, not just chasing something marketable. Adrienne was quiet for a long moment. My sister's name was Rebecca, she said finally. She left behind a daughter, Emma. She's 14 now, lives with her father in Seattle. Her expression was carefully controlled. I funded this project with my own money initially. Convinced the board later, but the first 60 million came from my personal assets. I've been sleeping 4 hours a night for 18 months. I've turned down acquisition offers that would have made me wealthier than I'll ever need to be, because those companies would have gutted the research division and stripped the IP. She met his eyes. This isn't about market share or profit margins. This is about making sure Emma doesn't lose anyone else, that other kids don't lose their parents to things we could have caught. So yes, Noah, it's real. The silence between them felt heavy with things neither of them wanted to say out loud. Okay, Noah said. Okay, I'll do it. Adrienne didn't smile, but something in her expression eased. Good. Rachel, get him set up with access credentials. I want him in the morning briefing tomorrow. Wait, Noah said. Tomorrow? I need time to… My son, I have to arrange… We have a corporate childcare facility in the building. I'll have them hold a slot for Ethan. You can bring him in, get him settled, then join us. Adrienne was already moving toward the door. Rachel will send you the briefing materials tonight. Read them. Be ready to contribute. She was halfway out when Noah called after her. Ms. Vale? She turned back. Thank you. Adrienne's expression was unreadable. Thank me when we've saved 1,000 lives. Until then, it's just a job. She left. Rachel grinned at him. She likes you. I can tell because she didn't eviscerate you. That was her being nice? That was her being invested. Trust me, you want her invested. Rachel pulled up a chair. Come on, let me show you what we're really dealing with. The pretty interface is for the investors. The actual code is a mess. We need your help untangling it. Noah didn't leave the lab until almost midnight. His brain felt like it had been rewired. Rachel had walked him through the entire system architecture, and with every layer they uncovered, Noah found himself simultaneously impressed by what they'd built and horrified by the inefficiencies. It's not that it's bad, he'd said at one point, staring at a particularly convoluted subroutine. But it's not good, Rachel finished. We know. That's why you're here. By the time he emerged into the parking garage, his head was swimming with possibilities. Refactoring the decision trees, implementing better temporal logic, adding contextual awareness that would reduce false positives without sacrificing sensitivity. He sat in his car for a full minute before starting it, hands on the steering wheel, trying to process what had just happened. This morning, he'd been a mediocre employee facing termination. Tonight, he was the director of a project that could change medicine. The drive home was a blur. Their apartment was in a building that had seen better days, in a neighborhood that was trying hard to gentrify but hadn't quite made it. Noah parked in his assigned spot under a flickering streetlight and took the stairs to the 3rd floor. His mom was asleep on the couch, some home improvement show playing quietly on the TV. She'd driven up from Ohio 3 months ago, said she was staying just for a bit to help with Ethan. That had been 90 days ago, and she showed no signs of leaving, which Noah was grateful for, even if he'd never quite figured out how to say it. He touched her shoulder gently. Hey, Mom. She startled awake, blinking. Noah, what time is it? Late, sorry. Got held up at work. His mom sat up, studying his face. Something happened. Yeah, something. I got a promotion. Sort of. Sort of? Noah sank into the chair across from her. They want me to lead a project, big project, important. That's wonderful, honey. But her expression was cautious. What's the catch? No catch. Better pay, better hours. They're even setting up childcare for Ethan. Then why do you look terrified? Noah laughed, but it came out shaky. Because it's the thing I quit, Mom. The research I walked away from after Sarah died. They built it without me, and now they want me to finish it. His mom was quiet for a long moment. Are you going to? I already said yes. But are you going to follow through, or are you going to sabotage yourself the way you do everything else? The words landed hard. Noah looked at her sharply. I don't… You do, baby. You've been punishing yourself for 2 years. Working jobs that don't challenge you. Keeping yourself small, like if you don't want anything, you can't lose it. She reached over, took his hand. Sarah would hate that. Noah's throat tightened. You don't know what she'd want. I know she'd want her son to have a father who was present, who was alive, not just surviving. His mom squeezed his hand. And I know she'd want you to use that brilliant brain of yours for something that matters. What if I fail? Then you fail, but at least you'll have tried. Noah sat there, letting the words settle. Ethan's asleep? He asked finally. Out cold. Tried to wait up for you, but he crashed around 9. She stood, gathering her things. I'm heading to bed. But Noah, I'm proud of you for saying yes. That took guts. After she left, Noah walked quietly down the hall to Ethan's room. The door was cracked open. His son was sprawled across the bed in the boneless way kids sleep, one arm flung over his stuffed dinosaur. Noah leaned against the doorframe, watching him breathe. 7 years old, first grade, learning to read, obsessed with space, terrified of the dark. A kid who still sometimes asked when mommy was coming home, even though he knew the answer. I'm going to try, Noah whispered into the darkness. I'm going to actually try this time. Ethan didn't stir. Noah pulled the door almost closed and headed to his own room. He had briefing materials to read, a whole new world to prepare for. Tomorrow, everything would change. He just hoped he was ready for it. The morning briefing started at 7:30, which meant Noah had to have Ethan fed, dressed, and out the door by 6:45. His son was not a morning person. I don't want to go to a new place, Ethan mumbled into his cereal, still half asleep. It's not new, buddy. It's just a different floor in the building where I work. But why can't I stay with Grandma? Noah glanced at his mother, who was pouring coffee with the careful movements of someone who hadn't slept well. She'd been doing this for 3 months, watching Ethan, keeping the apartment from falling apart, pretending she didn't mind that her retired life had turned into full-time childcare. Because Grandma needs a break, Noah said, and because this place has other kids, you might make friends. Ethan's expression suggested he found this unlikely. What if they're weird? Then you'll fit right in. His son glared at him, but there was a hint of a smile underneath. You're weird. Runs in the family. The child care center was on the 16th floor, tucked into a corner Noah had never noticed before. The woman who ran it introduced herself as Miss Patricia, 50s, warm smile, the kind of person who immediately made you feel like your kid would be okay. You must be Ethan, she said, crouching down to his eye level. Your dad told us about you. I hear you like dinosaurs. Ethan nodded cautiously. Well, we have a whole bin of them. Want to see? She led him toward a play area where 3 other kids were already building something elaborate with blocks. Ethan hesitated at the threshold, looking back at Noah. I'll be downstairs, Noah said. If you need me, Miss Patricia knows how to find me, okay? Okay. But Ethan didn't move. Noah walked over, knelt beside him. Hey, you're going to be fine. This is going to be better than sitting in the break room doing homework, I promise. What if I don't like it? Then we'll figure something else out. But you have to try first. Ethan considered this with the seriousness only a 7-year-old could muster. Okay, but you have to come get me at lunch. Deal. Noah watched his son walk slowly into the play area, still uncertain but willing. It was more than he could have asked for. The conference room on the 14th floor was already full when Noah arrived. He recognized Rachel from last night, surrounded by what looked like her entire team. 12 people, maybe 15, all with that particular exhaustion that came from working on something that mattered too much to walk away from. Adrienne sat at the head of the table, reading something on her tablet. She didn't look up when he entered, but she gestured to an empty chair near the middle. Noah sat, feeling wildly out of place. Everyone else had laptops open, notebooks filled with technical diagrams, the easy familiarity of people who'd been working together for months. All right, Adrienne said, setting down her tablet. Let's start with hospital integration updates. Marcus, where are we with Mercy General? A guy in his 30s with a beard and tired eyes pulled up a presentation. Live as of Monday, we've processed 4,000 patient encounters so far. 12 critical alerts, 11 confirmed positive, 1 false alarm. What was the false alarm? Post-op patient, elevated heart rate. System flagged for potential cardiac event, but it turned out to be anxiety response. Patient was fine. That's acceptable margin. Adrienne made a note. St. Catherine's? Going live next week, a woman across the table said. We're still training their staff on the alert protocols. Some resistance from the older attendings. Resistance how? They don't trust it. Think it's going to create more work. It will create more work, Adrienne said bluntly. That's not the point. The point is saving lives. If they can't get on board with that, we'll find hospitals that will. The woman nodded, but Noah could see the tension in her shoulders. Dealing with physician pushback was clearly not new. Rachel, development updates? Rachel launched into a technical rundown that lost most of the room within 30 seconds. Neural network optimization, algorithm refinement, sensitivity curves. Noah found himself following along easily, his brain slipping back into the patterns he'd abandoned years ago. We're still hitting that 17-second lag on complex cases, Rachel finished. Until we solve that, we can't scale to bigger hospitals. Noah. Adrienne's attention shifted to him, and suddenly everyone in the room was looking his way. You had thoughts on that last night. He hadn't expected to be put on the spot immediately. Yeah. The lag comes from running parallel analysis models. If we restructure to a hierarchical system, fast screening first, deep analysis only for ambiguous cases, we could cut that down significantly. How significantly? Marcus asked. 3 to 5 seconds, maybe less. That's a complete architecture redesign, someone said from the far end of the table. I know. We're talking months of work. Probably. And you think it's worth it? Adrienne's eyes were sharp on his. Noah met her gaze. I think if we're trying to build something that actually works at scale, we don't have a choice. 17 seconds is too long. A lot can happen in 17 seconds. The room was quiet for a beat. All right, Adrienne said. Rachel, work with Noah to map out the redesign timeline. I want a preliminary plan by end of week. She moved on without waiting for acknowledgement. Next item. False positive rate is still too high. We're at 14%, and that's going to kill adoption if doctors stop trusting the alerts. We've tried tuning the sensitivity threshold, someone said, but every time we reduce false positives, we start missing edge cases. So we need a better approach, Adrienne said. Ideas? Silence. Noah found himself speaking before he'd fully thought it through. The problem is we're treating all alerts the same, but not all false positives are equal. Some are borderline cases where being cautious makes sense. Others are obvious mistakes that undermine credibility. How do you distinguish? Rachel asked. Confidence scoring. The system already generates probability estimates. We surface those to the clinician. High confidence alerts get priority treatment. Low confidence alerts get flagged as monitor closely instead of immediate intervention. We'd still be generating alerts for low confidence cases, Marcus pointed out. Yeah, but we'd be honest about the uncertainty. Doctors can handle uncertainty. What they can't handle is being told something's critical when it turns out to be nothing. Adrienne was watching him with an expression he couldn't read. That's good. Develop it. Rachel, add it to the redesign plan. The meeting continued for another 90 minutes, covering everything from data security protocols to budget allocation. Noah contributed where he could, stayed quiet when he had nothing useful to add. By the time Adrienne dismissed everyone, his head was spinning. Rachel caught him in the hallway. That was solid input in there, the confidence scoring idea especially. It's pretty basic stuff. Maybe to you. The rest of us have been banging our heads against that problem for weeks. She pulled up something on her tablet. Listen, I'm putting together a working session this afternoon to start mapping the architecture redesign. You free? I need to check on my son at lunch, but after that, yeah. Great. Conference room B, 2 o'clock. Bring coffee. You're going to need it. Noah made it to the childcare center at noon to find Ethan building an elaborate dinosaur habitat with 2 other kids. His son barely looked up when he arrived. Hey, buddy, how's it going? Good. We're making a volcano. It's going to erupt and destroy everything. Sounds awesome. You want to grab lunch? Can I eat here? Miss Patricia said we're having pizza. Noah looked at Miss Patricia, who nodded. We do lunch every day. He's welcome to stay. You sure you don't want to come with me? Ethan was already back to arranging plastic dinosaurs. I'm good, Dad. It shouldn't have stung, but it did a little. Noah pushed the feeling down. This was good. Ethan was adjusting. That's what mattered. Okay, I'll be back to get you at 5. K. Noah left feeling oddly untethered. He grabbed a sandwich from the cafeteria and ate it at his new desk, not his old cubicle on the 12th floor, but an actual office on 14 with a door and a window. Someone had already set up his computer access, loaded his credentials into the system. A welcome packet sat on the keyboard with his new title embossed on the folder. Director Sentinel Systems Development. He opened the folder. Inside was a contract he hadn't signed yet, an org chart showing him directly under Adrian with Rachel and Marcus as peer directors, and a project timeline that made his stomach drop. They expected to double the hospital deployment within 6 months, scale to national coverage within 2 years. The ambition was staggering. Also, probably impossible. His phone buzzed. A text from his mother. "How's the first day?" He typed back. "Overwhelming. Good overwhelming, I think." "That's my boy. I'm making pot roast tonight. Celebration dinner." Noah smiled despite himself. His mom's pot roast was legendary. Sounds perfect. The working session that afternoon was intense. Rachel had assembled the core engineering team, 6 people who lived and breathed the Sentinel system code. They spent 4 hours whiteboarding the architecture redesign, arguing over implementation details, running simulations on what the performance gains might actually look like. "If we implement the hierarchical screening," one engineer said, "we're going to need to completely rebuild the alert prioritization system." "Not rebuild," Noah said, studying the diagram they'd sketched. "Refactor. The core logic is sound, we're just adding layers. Layers add complexity. Layers add intelligence. Right now the system is binary, alert or no alert. We need gradients, levels of concern that map to appropriate clinical responses." "That's a nice theory," Marcus said from where he was leaning against the wall. "But implementation is going to be hell." "I know. Do you? Because the last time we tried to make a major architecture change, we lost 3 months to debugging." Noah turned to face him. "Then we'll be more careful this time." "Easy to say when you weren't here for the last disaster." The room got quiet. Rachel shot Marcus a look. "What?" Marcus said. "I'm just pointing out that jumping into a massive redesign isn't risk-free. Neither is accepting the status quo when we know we can do better," Noah said evenly. "You've been here one day, you don't know what you don't know." "You're right, I don't. So tell me." Noah crossed his arms. "What am I missing?" Marcus studied him for a long moment. 3 months ago, we pushed an update that was supposed to reduce processing time. Instead, it crashed the system at 2 hospitals for 6 hours. You know what happens when an early warning system goes offline? People die. We had 1 patient, cardiac arrest, totally preventable. By the time the system came back online, it was too late. The weight of that hung in the air. That's on us, Marcus continued. On me, specifically, because I approved the deployment. So forgive me if I'm not eager to jump into another major overhaul without understanding every possible failure mode. Noah felt the anger drain out of him. "I'm sorry. I didn't know." "Yeah, well, now you do." Marcus pushed off the wall. "I'm not saying don't do the redesign. I'm saying let's be smart about it. Test the hell out of it. Build in redundancies. Make sure we're not creating new problems while solving old ones." "Agreed." Rachel cleared her throat. "Okay, so we're all on the same page that this needs to happen. We just need to do it right. Let's talk about testing protocols." They worked until almost 7. By the time Noah made it back to the childcare center, Ethan was one of only 2 kids left. He was curled up in a beanbag chair reading a book about space. "Sorry I'm late, buddy." Ethan looked up, unconcerned. "It's okay. Miss Patricia let me use her telescope. We saw Jupiter." "That's awesome." "It has moons, like a lot of moons." Noah signed the checkout sheet, thanked Miss Patricia, and headed out with his son chattering about planetary science. The kid's mood had completely flipped from this morning. Whatever anxiety he'd felt about the new place had evaporated. His mother's pot roast was waiting when they got home, and for the first time in longer than Noah could remember, dinner felt almost normal. Ethan talked nonstop about his day, about the other kids, about the volcano they were building. His mom asked gentle questions, kept the conversation flowing. "How about you?" she asked Noah. "How was day 1 as director?" "Intense. Good, I think. Still figuring it out." "Still..." "He's being modest," his mom said to Ethan. "Your dad's doing important work, helping save people's lives." Ethan looked at Noah with something like awe. "Really? Really? We're building a system that helps doctors catch problems before they get serious. Like a superhero thing?" "More like a really smart computer thing, but yeah, kind of." After dinner, after Ethan's bath and bedtime story, Noah collapsed on the couch with his laptop. He had reading to catch up on, 18 months of development documentation, research papers, implementation reports. His mom sat down beside him. "You look exhausted." "I am exhausted. But different than before, better." Noah glanced at her. Yeah? Yeah. You look like you're actually living again instead of just going through the motions. He didn't know what to say to that, so he just leaned over and kissed her forehead. Thanks for being here, Mom. I couldn't do this without you. I know, but you won't need me much longer. You're getting your feet under you. Don't go anywhere yet. Wasn't planning on it. The next 3 weeks blurred together. Noah threw himself into the work with an intensity that surprised even him. He arrived early, often before the rest of the team, spent hours in the lab with Rachel mapping out the architecture redesign. They built prototypes, ran simulations, stress-tested every component until they were confident it wouldn't break under real-world conditions. The false positive problem proved harder than expected. Even with confidence scoring, they were still generating too many borderline alerts. Noah spent a weekend diving deep into the specific cases, looking for patterns. He found it late Sunday night sitting at his kitchen table while Ethan slept and his mother watched some cooking show. The system was flagging patients based on snapshot data, single moments in time. But medicine wasn't about snapshots. It was about trajectories, how things changed over time. Monday morning, he brought the idea to Rachel. We need temporal analysis, he said, pulling up the data on her screen. Look at these false positives. They're all patients whose values crossed a threshold momentarily, but then normalized. The system saw the threshold crossing and panicked. Rachel studied the graphs. So we need the system to look at trends, not just absolute values. Exactly. If someone's heart rate spikes but immediately comes back down, that's different than a sustained elevation. The system needs to understand that difference. That's going to require real-time continuous monitoring, not just periodic checks. I know, but most modern hospital systems already collect continuous data. We're just not using it. Rachel leaned back in her chair. That's actually brilliant. Why didn't we think of that before? Because you were too close to it. Sometimes you need fresh eyes. They spent the next week implementing temporal analysis into the redesigned system. It was technically complex, required pulling data from sources they hadn't integrated before, but the results were immediate. In testing, the false positive rate dropped from 14% to 6% without losing sensitivity. Adrienne called a meeting to review the progress. 6%, she said, looking at the numbers. That's good. How confident are we that it holds up in real-world deployment? We've tested it against 3 months of historical data from all 4 pilot hospitals, Rachel said. It's consistent. What about edge cases? The weird one-off situations that don't fit normal patterns. We built in adaptive learning, Noah said. The system adjusts its baseline expectations based on individual patient history. So if someone normally runs a low heart rate, the system doesn't panic when they're at 60 instead of 80. And if someone's baseline is abnormal, the system flags it for clinical review, but it doesn't trigger an emergency alert. It's saying, hey, this is unusual for this patient, not this patient is dying. Adrienne studied the data for a long moment. All right, I want to run a controlled pilot. 1 hospital, 2 weeks. We deploy the updated system, but we don't tell the clinical staff about the changes. We just watch and see if the alert fatigue decreases. That's risky, Marcus said. If something goes wrong, we'll have the old system running in parallel as backup. Any case the new system misses, the old system will catch. Adrienne looked around the table. But we need real-world validation before we can scale. This is how we get it. The pilot ran at Mercy General starting the following Monday. Noah spent the first 3 days practically living in the lab, monitoring every alert, every case, waiting for something to break. It didn't break. The alert volume dropped by 40%. The false alarms that did occur were genuinely ambiguous cases where extra caution made sense. And crucially, they didn't miss a single critical case. On day 4, Noah got a call from Dr. Sarah Chen, the hospitalist leading the pilot program at Mercy General. I don't know what you did, she said without preamble, but it's working. My residents aren't complaining about alert fatigue anymore. And we caught 2 cases yesterday that we definitely would have missed. What cases? Elderly patient came in with what looked like a UTI. Your system flagged early sepsis markers that weren't obvious yet. We started antibiotics 12 hours earlier than we would have otherwise. She's doing great. And the second case? Post-surgical patient, hip replacement. System caught early signs of PE, pulmonary embolism. We did a CT scan, confirmed it, started anticoagulation. Patient had 0 symptoms yet. If we'd waited for symptoms, she probably wouldn't have made it. Noah had to sit down. That's That's exactly what it's supposed to do. Well, it's doing it. Whatever changes you made, keep making them. After he hung up, Noah just sat there for a minute, letting it sink in. 2 lives. 2 people who were alive because of work he'd done in the last 3 weeks. Rachel found him staring at his computer screen. You okay? Yeah, just Dr. Chen called. The system caught 2 critical cases. I know, I saw the alerts come through. Rachel pulled up a chair. Feels good, doesn't it? Feels terrifying. Why? Because it's real now. It's not theoretical anymore. If I screw up, if we push an update that doesn't work, people actually die. People die anyway, Noah. That's the whole point. We're trying to prevent some of those deaths. She paused. You can't let the fear of failure paralyze you. That's how we end up never improving anything. He knew she was right. Didn't make it easier. The success of the Mercy General pilot gave them the green light to expand. Over the next 2 months, they deployed the updated system to all 4 pilot hospitals, then began onboarding 3 more. Each deployment was nerve-wracking, each new hospital a chance for something to go catastrophically wrong. Nothing went catastrophically wrong. The system worked. Not perfectly. They still had edge cases that confused it, still had occasional false positives that made doctors roll their eyes. But the trend line was clear. They were catching conditions earlier, preventing complications, saving lives. Noah found himself falling into a rhythm. Early mornings in the lab before Ethan woke up, working through problems that had seemed impossible a month ago. Afternoons in meetings, coordinating with hospital staff, training new users. Evenings with his son, actually present instead of just physically there. His mom started talking about heading back to Ohio. You don't need me anymore, she said one night over dinner. I'll always need you. That's sweet, but you know what I mean. You've got this handled. Ethan's thriving, you're thriving. It's time for me to get back to my own life. Noah felt a pang of something that might have been abandonment, which was ridiculous. When? End of the month. I'll come back for Thanksgiving, and you can visit for Christmas. Ethan protested loudly, but Noah could see his mom was right. They'd been leaning on her as a crutch, and it was time to stand on their own. The day she left, the apartment felt too quiet. But Noah made dinner anyway, helped Ethan with his homework, maintained the routine they'd built. It was harder without her there, but it was manageable. He could do this. A few days after his mom left, Adrienne called him to her office. It was late afternoon and he was exhausted from a marathon debugging session. He almost asked if it could wait until tomorrow, but something in her tone made him head up immediately. She was standing by the window when he arrived, looking out at the city. We got the FDA clearance, she said without turning around. It took a moment for the words to register. For full deployment? For full deployment. We can start scaling nationally next quarter. Noah sank into one of her chairs. That's huge. It's what we've been working toward. Adrienne finally turned to face him. But it means everything gets bigger. More hospitals, more pressure, more scrutiny. Are you ready for that? I don't know. Probably not. Good. People who think they're ready are the ones who screw it up. She moved to her desk, pulled up something on her screen. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Okay? Are you doing this because you believe in the work, or because you're trying to make up for losing your wife? The question hit like a fist. What? I need to know you're here for the right reasons. Because if you're chasing redemption, if you're trying to save Sarah retroactively by saving other people, that's going to burn you out. And I can't have the director of this project burning out. Noah wanted to be angry, but she wasn't wrong to ask. Both, maybe. I don't know how to separate them. Then don't. Just be aware of it. Adrienne's expression softened slightly. I'm asking because I've been where you are. After Rebecca died, I threw myself into this project like it could bring her back. It can't. Nothing can. But it can mean something. It can matter. Does that help, knowing it matters? Some days? Other days, it just reminds me that she's gone and no amount of lives saved will change that. She paused. But I keep doing it anyway because the alternative is worse. They sat in silence for a moment. The board wants to meet you, Adrienne said eventually. They're impressed with the results. They want to understand the vision for national rollout. When? Next week. I'll be there, but they're going to want to hear from you directly. Can you handle that? Noah thought about standing in front of a board of directors. explaining technical details to people who probably didn't care about the science, just the profit margins. I'll figure it out. You'll do better than figure it out. You'll show them why this matters, why we're not just building another medical device, we're changing the standard of care. No pressure. Adrienne almost smiled. You can handle pressure. You've been handling it for 2 years. This is just a different kind. Noah left her office feeling like he'd just been pushed off a cliff and told to figure out flying on the way down. The board meeting was in 6 days. He needed to prepare a presentation, gather data, come up with answers to questions he couldn't even anticipate yet. That night, after Ethan was asleep, he sat at the kitchen table with his laptop and started outlining. The technical details were easy. He could talk about the system architecture in his sleep at this point. But Adrienne was right. The board wouldn't care about the technical details. They'd care about scalability, market penetration, return on investment. He needed to make them care about the lives. By 2 in the morning, he had a rough draft. By the end of the week, he had something he didn't completely hate. Rachel helped him refine the technical sections. Marcus pushed him to be clear about the implementation challenges. Even Adrienne sat through a practice run, offering brutally honest feedback. Stop apologizing for limitations, she said. Own them. Say, here's what we can't do yet, and here's our plan to get there. I'm not apologizing. You said, unfortunately, 6 times. That's apologizing. Noah ran through it again, cutting out the hedging language, speaking with more confidence than he felt. By the day of the actual meeting, he'd practiced it so many times the words came automatically. The boardroom was exactly as intimidating as he'd feared. 12 people in expensive suits sitting around a table that probably cost more than his car. Adrienne sat at one end, expression unreadable. Noah stood at the other with his presentation loaded and his hand shaking slightly. He took a breath and started talking. He told them about Jennifer, the 41-year-old woman with 2 kids who would have died without the system. He told them about the elderly patient at Mercy General, the post-surgical PE they'd caught before symptoms appeared. He walked them through the numbers. Lives saved, complications prevented, hospital costs reduced. Then he showed them the roadmap. National deployment, integration with electronic health records, expansion into other clinical areas. Stroke prediction, cardiac arrest prevention, medication interaction monitoring. This isn't just about diagnosing problems, he said. It's about predicting them, catching them before they become critical, changing the entire paradigm of hospital care from reactive to proactive. When he finished, the room was quiet. Then a woman at the far end of the table spoke. What's the biggest risk to scaling? Physician adoption, Noah said immediately. The technology works, but if doctors don't trust it, if they start ignoring alerts, it doesn't matter how good the system is. And how do you address that? By making it impossible to ignore. Not through forced compliance, but through demonstrated value. Every time the system catches something a doctor would have missed, that builds trust. Every time it prevents a complication, that builds credibility. We're not asking doctors to trust us blindly. We're earning that trust one case at a time. Another board member jumped in. What about liability? If the system misses something, who's responsible? The system is a decision support tool, not a replacement for clinical judgment. The doctor still makes the final call, but we provide them with information they wouldn't have otherwise. If they choose to ignore that information, that's on them. The questions continued for another 40 minutes. Some technical, some financial, some that Noah had no idea how to answer and had to admit it. But he didn't fall apart, didn't freeze. He held his ground. Finally, Adrienne stepped in. I think that's enough for today. Noah, thank you. We'll continue this discussion in executive session. He was being dismissed. Noah gathered his materials, nodded to the board, and walked out on legs that felt like rubber. Rachel was waiting in the hallway. How'd it go? I have no idea. I think okay? Maybe terrible. I can't tell. You were in there for over an hour. That's good. When they hate a presentation, they cut it off in 15 minutes. Noah leaned against the wall. I need coffee, or possibly a sedative. Coffee first, come on. They were halfway to the elevator when Adrienne emerged from the boardroom. Noah, a word. His stomach dropped. Rachel gave him a sympathetic look and kept walking. Did I screw up? He asked once they were alone. No, you did well. Adrienne's expression was as controlled as ever. They're going to approve the national rollout, full funding, priority status. Relief flooded through him. Really? Really? They were impressed, not just with the results, but with your vision for where this goes next. She paused. They want to move faster than I'd planned. National deployment within 9 months instead of 2 years. We're not ready for that. I know, but they're not interested in our timeline. They're interested in market position. There are competitors working on similar systems. If we don't move fast, we lose the advantage. Noah's mind raced. 9 months. We'd need to double the team, streamline the implementation process, build out training programs for dozens of hospitals simultaneously. Which is why I need you fully committed. No half measures, no holding back. Adrian met his eyes. This is going to be brutal. Long hours, constant pressure, high stakes. Can you handle that? He thought about Ethan, about the promise he'd made to put his son first, about the careful balance he'd been maintaining between work and life. I can handle it, he said, but I need support. I can't do this alone. You won't be alone. We're bringing in additional staff, project managers, implementation specialists, but you're leading this, Noah. That means making the hard calls, pushing the team, not accepting good enough when we need great. I understand. Do you? Because once we start this, there's no backing out. We're going to be under a microscope. Every hospital deployment, every alert, every outcome. One major failure and the whole thing collapses. I understand, Noah said again, more firmly. Adrian studied him for a long moment. All right, get some rest this weekend. Monday, we start planning the rollout. Noah didn't get rest that weekend. He spent Saturday in the office with Rachel and Marcus, mapping out what a 9-month national rollout would actually require. The numbers were staggering. They'd need to onboard 40 hospitals minimum, train over 2,000 clinical staff, integrate with dozens of different electronic health record systems. This is insane, Marcus said, staring at the timeline they'd sketched on the whiteboard. We're talking about compressing 2 years of work into 9 months. I know. Do you? Because I don't think you actually understand what you're agreeing to. Marcus turned to face him. We're going to be working 80-hour weeks. We're going to miss every deadline by at least 2 weeks. Something's going to break, probably multiple somethings, and when it does, people are going to blame you. Then we make sure things don't break. That's not how this works. You can't engineer away risk when you're moving this fast. Rachel held up a hand. Fighting about it doesn't help. We need to figure out what's actually possible and what's fantasy. They spent the next 6 hours breaking down the implementation into phases. Initial deployment to 10 high-volume hospitals, followed by regional expansion, then national coverage. Each phase had dependencies, critical paths, potential failure points. We'll need dedicated implementation teams for each region, Rachel said. Can't expect clinical staff to figure this out on their own. That means hiring, Noah said. How many people are we talking? 20, maybe 30. Mix of technical specialists and clinical trainers. Adrian's going to love that budget request. Adrian approved national rollout. She knows what it costs. By the time Noah left the office, it was nearly 8. He'd promised Ethan they'd go to the Science Museum Sunday, and he was already dreading the exhaustion of trying to be present while his brain was stuck on hospital deployment schedules. But when Sunday came, Ethan's excitement pulled him out of his head. They spent 4 hours wandering exhibits, building circuits, launching miniature rockets. His son's enthusiasm was infectious, and for a few hours, Noah actually forgot about work. Dad, look at this! Ethan called from the space exhibit. He was standing in front of a display about Mars rovers, eyes wide. It says the robots have to make decisions on their own because signals take too long to get there. Noah walked over, read the description. Yeah, light takes about 20 minutes to travel from Mars to Earth. So by the time the scientists see what's happening, it's already ancient history. That's like your system, right? It has to decide things fast because waiting is bad. The comparison caught Noah off guard. That's actually a pretty good analogy. Yeah. When someone's having a medical emergency, 17 seconds can be the difference between catching it and missing it. So you're building a robot doctor? More like a really smart helper for the doctors. It notices things they might miss. Ethan thought about this seriously. Mom would have thought that was cool. The mention of Sarah hit Noah like a punch. Ethan rarely brought her up anymore, and when he did, it was always careful, like he was testing whether it was okay. She would have, Noah said quietly. She always believed medicine could be better, smarter. Do you miss her? Every day. Me too. Ethan went back to looking at the Mars rover. But I'm glad you're doing the thing that would make her happy. Noah had to turn away for a second, blinking hard. When he trusted his voice, he said, "Come on, let's go see the planetarium show." Monday morning brought chaos. Adrienne had assembled what she called a war room, a conference space on the 15th floor that would serve as command center for the rollout. Whiteboards covered every wall, monitors displayed hospital data feeds, and a coffee maker that looked industrial sat in the corner. "This is home for the next 9 months," Adrienne announced to the assembled team. 20 people, most of whom Noah had never met. "I've brought in project managers from our infrastructure division, clinical consultants, implementation specialists. Noah, Rachel, and Marcus will lead the technical work. Everyone else reports to them." She ran through the org chart with brutal efficiency. Who owned what? Who reported to whom? What the success metrics were. Then she turned the floor over to Noah. He walked through the phased deployment plan they'd sketched out over the weekend. The room listened in silence, and he could see the doubt on faces when he got to the timeline. "I know it's aggressive," he said. "I know we're going to hit obstacles we haven't anticipated. But the alternative is letting people die while we take our time getting comfortable." "That's a false choice," someone said from the back. A woman in her 40s, sharp eyes, arms crossed. "The alternative is doing this right instead of doing it fast. Quality takes time." "Who are you?" "Dr. Linda Morrison, clinical consultant. I've been implementing health IT systems for 15 years, and I've seen what happens when companies prioritize speed over safety." "I'm not prioritizing speed over safety. I'm saying we can do both." "No, you can't. That's not how this works." Linda stood up. "You're talking about integrating with legacy systems that were built in the 90s, training staff who are already overworked, implementing changes to clinical workflow during flu season. This timeline is suicide." The room shifted uncomfortably. Noah felt his frustration rising. "So what do you suggest? We tell the board we can't do it? Watch them pull funding? Let our competitors beat us to market? I suggest we be honest about what's achievable and what's not. Push back on unrealistic expectations instead of pretending we're superhuman." "Enough," Adrienne said, her voice cutting through the tension. "Linda, your concerns are noted. Noah, she's not wrong about the challenges. But the timeline stands. We're doing this in 9 months. The question is how, not whether." Linda sat back down, clearly unsatisfied. "We start with the pilot expansion," Adrienne continued. "We have 4 hospitals running the system successfully. We're going to add 6 more this quarter. That gives us 10 sites where we can refine the implementation process before scaling nationally." The meeting continued for another 2 hours, breaking down tasks, assigning responsibilities, setting checkpoints. By the end, Noah's head was pounding. Rachel caught him afterward. "Linda's got a point, you know." "I know. So why are you fighting her?" "Because if we start making excuses now, we'll never stop. The work expands to fill the timeline. If we say it takes 2 years, it'll take 2 years. If we say 9 months, we'll figure out how to do it in 9 months. That's optimistic thinking, also possibly delusional. Noah managed a tired smile. Little bit of both, probably. The first pilot expansion hospital was St. Catherine's in Denver. They'd been on the waiting list since the beginning, and their chief medical officer, Dr. Richard Santos, was a true believer in the technology. Noah flew out for the implementation kickoff, bringing Rachel and 2 technical specialists. The training session was supposed to be straightforward, 2 hours covering system basics, alert protocols, escalation procedures. It turned into a battle. "This is going to slow us down," one attending said bluntly. "We're already checking a dozen different systems. Now you want us to monitor another one?" "It's integrated into your existing workflow," Rachel explained. "The alerts populate directly in the patient chart. You don't have to go looking for them." "And when the alerts are wrong? When we waste time chasing false positives?" "The false positive rate is under 6%, Noah said. That means for every 100 alerts, 94 are catching real problems. So 6% of the time we're chasing ghosts. That's 6 wasted interventions per 100 patients. And 94 interventions that prevent serious complications. The math is pretty clearly in favor." The attending wasn't convinced. Neither were half the people in the room. Noah could see it in their body language. Arms crossed, eyes skeptical. The resigned tolerance of people who'd been told to implement yet another administrative burden. Dr. Santos tried to smooth things over. "Look, I understand the resistance. Change is hard, especially when you're already stretched thin. But I've seen this system work at Mercy General. It catches things we would have missed. That's worth the adjustment period. Easy for you to say. You're not the one getting paged at 2 a.m. for false alarms. Actually, I am. I'm planning to use this system myself. If it's good enough for my patients, it's good enough for yours. That helped, but not enough. The session ended with grudging compliance rather than enthusiasm. Afterward, Noah sat with Dr. Santos in his office. "They'll come around," Santos said, pouring coffee. "Once they see it work, they'll trust it. And if they don't, if they just start ignoring the alerts, then we have a different problem. But I don't think it'll come to that." Santos leaned back. "You know what your biggest challenge is going to be?" "What?" "Making this invisible. Right now it feels like extra work because it's new and different. But if you can make it feel like a natural part of the workflow, like just another thing the system does automatically, adoption becomes easier." "How do we do that?" "Better integration. Right now the alerts are separate from the standard clinical decision support. They feel like interruptions. If you can weave them into the existing tools doctors already use, make them feel native instead of bolted on, you'll get less resistance." Noah made notes. This was exactly the kind of insight he needed. Not from engineers, but from the people actually using the system. The St. Catharines deployment went live the following Monday. Noah stayed in Denver for the first 3 days, monitoring alerts, watching how the staff responded, looking for problems. There were problems. The alert volume was higher than expected because St. Catharines had a different patient population than Mercy General, older, sicker, more complex cases. The system was catching real issues, but it was also overwhelming the staff. "We need to tune the sensitivity thresholds for this hospital's specific demographics," Noah told Rachel over video call. "The settings we used at Mercy General aren't translating. That means custom configuration for each hospital." "I know. That's not scalable. We can't manually tune 40 hospitals." "So we build adaptive learning. The system adjusts its own thresholds based on the patient population it's seeing." "That's..." Rachel paused. "That's actually smart. But it's also going to take time to develop." "How much time?" "A month, maybe 6 weeks." "We don't have 6 weeks. We need this working before the next hospital comes online in 3 weeks. Then we're going to have to prioritize. Delay the next deployment or ship the adaptive learning half-finished." Noah rubbed his eyes. This was exactly what Linda had warned about. Impossible choices, compressed timelines, quality suffering because they were moving too fast. "Ship it half-finished," he said. "We'll iterate in production." "That's risky." "I know, do it anyway." The adaptive learning feature went live 2 weeks later. It was rough, needed constant monitoring, through occasional errors that required manual intervention. But it worked well enough. The alert volume at St. Catharines decreased by 30% while maintaining sensitivity. Hospital number 6 was Johns Hopkins in Baltimore. Prestigious, demanding, zero tolerance for systems that didn't work flawlessly. Noah spent a week there personally overseeing the implementation, fixing bugs in real time, adjusting configurations on the fly. They caught their first major case on day 3. 67-year-old man, admitted for pneumonia. Standard treatment protocol, nothing remarkable. The Sentinel system flagged him at 2 a.m. for a potential cardiac event. The overnight resident almost ignored it. The patient's vitals looked stable, no obvious distress. But the system was insistent. High confidence alert, recommended immediate EKG. The resident ordered it, grumbling. The EKG showed ST segment elevation. The patient was having a silent heart attack. They got him to the cath lab within 40 minutes. 3 blocked coronary arteries. Without the early catch, he would have coded before morning rounds. The next day, the attending who'd been most skeptical during training stopped Noah in the hallway. "That alert last night," he said. "The cardiac case." "Yeah? How did it know? This patient had no chest pain, no shortness of breath, nothing that would have made us look twice." Combination of factors. Slight elevation in troponin levels that could have been from the infection, but the trend was wrong. Heart rate variability outside normal parameters. Blood pressure that was stable but lower than his baseline. None of it was diagnostic on its own, but together, the pattern suggested cardiac ischemia. That's pretty remarkable. That's what it's designed to do. Find patterns humans miss. The attending nodded slowly. "All right, I'm a believer." What do you need from us to make this work better? By the end of week 2, Johns Hopkins was running smoothly. The next 3 hospitals came online with fewer hiccups. The implementation process was getting refined. The training materials were getting better. The system itself was learning and adapting. But the pace was brutal. Noah was working 16-hour days, sleeping maybe 5 hours a night when he was lucky. He'd stopped cooking, resorted to takeout for every meal. Ethan was spending more time in the childcare center, and Noah hated how often he missed dinner, missed bedtime, missed the small moments that made parenting worthwhile. "You look terrible," Rachel said one morning when he showed up to the office at 6 a.m. "Thanks. I'm serious. When's the last time you took a day off?" Noah tried to remember. 3 weeks? Maybe 4? That's not sustainable. I know, but we're always in the middle of something. That's how these projects work. If you wait for a convenient time to rest, you'll never rest. She was right. Noah knew she was right. But every time he thought about stepping back, he'd see another hospital coming online, another case the system caught, another life saved. How was he supposed to walk away from that? Late one night, working alone in the war room, Noah's phone rang. Ethan's name on the screen. His son never called this late. "Hey, buddy, everything okay?" "I'm sick." Ethan's voice was small, congested. "My throat hurts and I'm really hot." Noah was already grabbing his jacket. "Where's Grandma?" "She went home, remember? Like a month ago." "Right." He'd forgotten. He'd asked Miss Patricia to stay late, arranged for Ethan to sleep in the childcare center overnight because Noah had a critical deployment to monitor. "I'm coming to get you right now. Hang tight, okay?" He was out the door in 30 seconds, taking the stairs because waiting for the elevator felt impossible. Ethan was curled up on one of the sofas when Noah arrived, wrapped in a blanket, face flushed with fever. "Hey, kiddo, let's get you home." "I threw up." "That's okay. We'll clean it up." Noah felt Ethan's forehead, burning hot. "When did you start feeling bad?" "After dinner. I told Miss Patricia, but she said you were busy." Guilt hit Noah like a truck. His son had been sick for hours, and he'd been too absorbed in work to notice. He carried Ethan down to the car, buckled him in, drove home trying not to speed too badly. Got him into bed, found the thermometer, took his temperature. 103. Noah called the pediatrician's after-hours line. The nurse asked questions, recommended children's Tylenol and monitoring. If the fever went above 104 or lasted more than 2 days, bring him in. He gave Ethan medicine, put a cool washcloth on his forehead, sat on the edge of the bed. "I'm sorry I wasn't there when you first got sick." "It's okay. You were saving people." "You're more important than saving people." Ethan's eyes were already drooping. "Can you stay until I fall asleep?" "I'll stay all night if you want." "Okay." Noah sat there in the dark, watching his son breathe, listening to the congested rattle in his chest. This was supposed to be what mattered. Not the hospital deployments, not the board meetings, not the national rollout. This kid, this moment, this responsibility. But somehow he'd let it slip, let work consume him the way it had before, the way he'd sworn he wouldn't. His phone buzzed, Rachel texting about a bug in the Johns Hopkins deployment. Noah looked at the message, looked at Ethan, and turned the phone off. Whatever it was, it could wait until morning. Ethan's fever broke around 4 a.m. Noah dozed in the chair beside the bed, waking every hour to check temperature, offer water, make sure his son was breathing okay. By morning, Ethan was sleeping peacefully, temperature down to 99. Noah's phone showed 17 missed messages. 3 from Rachel, 6 from Marcus, 8 from people he didn't recognize but who presumably worked on the implementation team. He ignored all of them, made Ethan breakfast when his son woke up, set up the TV with cartoons, stayed home until he was certain the worst had passed. It was almost noon when he finally called Rachel. "Where the hell have you been?" she said instead of hello. "We've been trying to reach you since midnight. Ethan was sick. I had to turn my phone off. We had a critical alert failure at Johns Hopkins. The system went down for 3 hours. We needed you." "Did anyone die?" Silence. "No." "Then it wasn't critical. It was urgent, maybe, but not critical. Critical is my kid with 103 fever and nobody there to take care of him." "Noah, I'm serious, Rachel. I've been killing myself on this project for 3 months, working every weekend, missing time with my son, barely sleeping. And last night he needed me, and I almost wasn't there because I was too busy monitoring a hospital deployment. So what are you saying? I'm saying I need boundaries. I need to be able to turn my phone off at night. I need weekends where I'm not working. I need to actually be a parent, not just someone who pays for childcare and shows up occasionally. Rachel was quiet for a long moment. You're right. I'm sorry. We've been pushing too hard. We all have, and it's not sustainable. Noah looked at Ethan, who was half asleep on the couch, clutching his dinosaur. I'll come in this afternoon, but I'm leaving at 5, and I'm not working this weekend. Okay? And if that means we miss a deadline, we miss a deadline. Noah, I mean it. My son comes first. That was the deal from the beginning. When he hung up, his hands were shaking. He'd never drawn a line like that before, never put his foot down so firmly. It felt terrifying and necessary in equal measure. That afternoon, Adrienne called him to her office. Rachel told me about last night, she said without preamble. If you're going to lecture me about commitment, I'm not. Adrienne gestured to a chair. Sit down. Noah sat, wary. I'm going to tell you something I don't talk about, Adrienne said. After my sister died, I threw myself into work. 16-hour days, 7 days a week. Told myself I was honoring her memory, doing something meaningful. My niece Emma was living with her father in Seattle. I'd visit once a month, call every week, send gifts. Thought I was maintaining the relationship. She paused, looking out the window. When Emma was 12, she wrote me a letter, said she understood I was busy, understood the work was important, but she missed having an aunt who was actually present. She didn't want gifts or phone calls. She wanted me to show up to her soccer games, help with homework, be there for the boring everyday stuff. Noah waited. I realized I'd been using work as an excuse, as a way to avoid dealing with the grief, the guilt, the fact that I couldn't save Rebecca. And in the process, I was failing Emma the same way I felt like I'd failed her mother. Adrienne turned back to face him. You're doing the same thing. I know. Do you? Because it's easy to know intellectually and still keep making the same mistakes. She leaned forward. This project matters. It's saving lives. But if you lose your son in the process, what's the point? I'm not losing him. You're heading that direction. Kid gets sick and you're not there? That's a warning sign. Noah felt defensive anger rising. I was there. I came as soon as he called. But you shouldn't have needed the call. You should have been home already. Adrienne's voice was firm but not unkind. I'm not saying quit. I'm saying recalibrate. Figure out what sustainable looks like and commit to that. The timeline is aggressive but not impossible. We have 20 people working on this. You don't have to carry it alone. She pulled up something on her screen. I'm assigning 2 of the implementation managers to report directly to me instead of you. That's 40% of the deployment coordination work off your plate. I can handle. I'm not asking. This is happening. Your job is leading the technical development and strategy, not managing every hospital deployment personally. Noah wanted to argue, but the relief was immediate. Just the thought of not having to oversee every implementation detail felt like breathing after holding his breath too long. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just keep your priorities straight. Adrienne's expression softened slightly. You're doing excellent work, Noah. The system is performing beyond expectations. Hospitals are adopting it faster than projected. The board is thrilled, but none of that matters if you burn out or lose what you're actually working for. That weekend, Noah kept his promise. No laptop, no work emails, no checking in on hospital deployments. He and Ethan went to the park, built a massive Lego spaceship, made pancakes for dinner because why not? Sunday afternoon, Ethan asked, "Are you going to keep being home more?" "I'm going to try. The project's still busy, but I'm going to make sure I'm here for the important stuff." "What's important stuff?" "You, dinners, bedtime, helping with homework, being a dad instead of just someone who lives here." Ethan thought about this. "Okay, that sounds good." It was such a simple response, but it hit Noah hard. His son's expectations had gotten so low that just being present felt like a luxury. He was going to fix that. Monday morning, Noah came back to the office with renewed focus. The implementation managers Adrienne had reassigned were already handling hospital deployments with competence he hadn't given them credit for. The technical work that actually needed his attention was substantial but manageable. Rachel noticed the difference immediately. "You seem calmer." "I am calmer. Turns out delegating actually works." "Who knew?" The next hospital deployment was in Seattle. Noah didn't go personally, let the implementation team handle it. They ran into issues with the integration, called him for consultation, and he walked them through the fix remotely. The system went live on schedule. Hospital 14, 15, 16. Each one got easier. The process was becoming refined, the team was getting confident. The system itself was learning from each new environment. By month 6, they had 20 hospitals live and operational. The data was staggering. Over 300 critical alerts, 92% confirmed positive. Estimated lives saved, 47. 47 people who went home to their families because of work Noah's team had done. He kept a list of them. Not names, those were confidential, but cases. The 74-year-old woman who would have stroked out without the early warning. The teenager with appendicitis that was about to rupture. The diabetic patient whose blood sugar was crashing asymptomatically. Each one represented someone's mother, father, child, sibling, someone who mattered to someone else. The weight of it was immense. Also worth carrying. One evening, working late but not too late, Adrienne stopped by his office. "You should see this," she said, pulling up an email on her phone. It was from Dr. Santos at St. Catherine's. Long, detailed, full of specific cases and data. The last paragraph made Noah's throat tight. "I've been practicing medicine for 27 years. I've seen a lot of innovations come and go, a lot of promises that didn't deliver. But this system is different. It's making me a better doctor. More importantly, it's giving my patients a better chance. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. This matters." Noah read it twice. That's what we're working for," Adrienne finished. "Not board approval, not market share. The knowledge that we're making a real difference. It doesn't make the stress easier. No, but it makes it worthwhile." She was right. And for the first time in months, Noah felt like maybe he could actually sustain this. The work was still intense. The stakes were still high, but he'd found a rhythm that didn't require sacrificing everything else. He left the office at 6, picked up Ethan from the child care center, made dinner together. They talked about Ethan's day, about the science project he was working on, about nothing particularly important. It was perfect. Later, after Ethan was asleep, Noah sat on the couch with a beer and his laptop. Not working, just reading through the latest system performance reports. The numbers told a story of steady improvement, better accuracy, faster processing, smarter learning. They were going to hit the 9-month deadline. Not perfectly, not without problems, but they were going to make it. His phone buzzed. Rachel texting. "New hospital came online tonight. Cincinnati Medical Center. First alert just fired. Caught a PE before symptoms appeared. Patient's going to be fine." Noah smiled and texted back. "That's 48. Who's counting?" "I am." "Of course you are." He set the phone down, finished his beer, and allowed himself a moment of quiet satisfaction. They weren't done. There was still work to do, still hospitals to onboard, still problems to solve. But they were doing it, actually making the thing real. And for once, Noah felt like maybe he deserved to be proud of that. The crisis hit on a Tuesday in month 7. Noah was in a planning meeting when Marcus burst through the door, laptop in hand, face pale. "We have a problem, major problem." Everyone stopped talking. "Phoenix Memorial just had a patient code," Marcus said, pulling up data on the main screen. 62-year-old woman. The system flagged her for potential cardiac event 6 hours ago. High confidence alert. The attending dismissed it as a false positive. Noah's stomach dropped. And she arrested 20 minutes ago. They got her back, but she's in ICU now. Significant cardiac damage. If they'd acted on the alert, show me the data. Marcus brought up the patient's chart. Noah scanned it, his trained eye picking apart the details. The Sentinel system had flagged elevated troponin levels, abnormal EKG patterns, blood pressure trending downward. All the markers were there. Why did the attending dismiss it? Because she'd been admitted 2 days earlier for chest pain. They'd already ruled out cardiac event. He thought the system was picking up old data. But it wasn't. No, it was catching a new event, a second cardiac episode that developed after the initial workup. Noah felt sick. This was exactly the scenario they'd been trying to prevent. What's her prognosis? Unknown. She's stable for now, but the damage was significant. If we'd caught it 6 hours earlier, I know. Noah turned to the room. We need to do a full case review, figure out exactly what happened and why. The meeting dissolved into controlled chaos. People calling Phoenix Memorial, pulling system logs, analyzing the alert that had been ignored. Noah tried to stay focused, tried to think through the technical aspects, but all he could see was that woman coding, her family getting the call, the damage that might have been prevented. Adrienne appeared in the doorway an hour later. My office. Now. Noah followed her upstairs, knowing this was bad, knowing that one failure could undermine months of success. Adrienne closed the door behind them. Tell me what happened. Noah walked through it. The alert, the attending's dismissal, the delayed response, the arrest. Is she going to make it? Adrienne asked. We don't know yet. And if she doesn't, if she dies? Then we have a death that could have been prevented if a doctor had trusted our system. Adrienne was quiet for a moment. That's not entirely fair. The system has false positives. Doctors are trained to use clinical judgment. He made a call based on the information he had. The information he had included our alert. He chose to ignore it. Because he didn't trust it, and that's on us. Adrienne sat down, looking suddenly tired. We've been so focused on reducing false positives that we haven't adequately addressed the trust problem. Doctors ignore alerts they don't believe in. So what do? We figure out how to make the system more transparent. Show doctors why it's flagging something, not just that it is. Give them the reasoning so they can make informed decisions. Noah nodded slowly. That's actually what we should have been doing from the beginning. Hindsight is useless. What matters is what we do now. Adrienne pulled up something on her computer. The board is going to hear about this. Probably by end of day. They're going to want answers. What kind of answers? The kind that don't involve blaming a physician for using clinical judgment. The kind that show we're taking responsibility and implementing fixes. Noah spent the rest of the day working with Rachel on what they were calling the transparency update. Instead of just showing an alert, the system would display the specific data points that triggered it, the confidence level, the reasoning chain. Doctors could see exactly why the system was concerned. This is going to add complexity to the interface, Rachel said. I don't care. If it builds trust, it's worth it. They had a prototype working by midnight. Noah tested it against the Phoenix Memorial case, showing exactly how it would have displayed differently. The alert would have shown, elevated troponin trend suggests new cardiac event separate from previous episode. Confidence, 87%. Recommend repeat EKG and cardiac enzyme panel. Clear, specific, actionable. We need to push this to all hospitals immediately, Noah said. That's a major update. We should test it first. We don't have time. Every day we wait is another chance for this to happen again. Rachel looked at him carefully. You're taking this personally. Of course I'm taking it personally. A woman almost died because a doctor didn't trust our system. That's on me. That's on a lot of people, including the doctor who dismissed the alert. He dismissed it because we didn't give him enough information to trust it. That's a design failure. Rachel sighed. All right, we'll push the update, but if this breaks something, it won't. You don't know that. Then we'll fix it fast. The transparency update went live on Thursday. Noah spent the next 72 hours barely sleeping, monitoring every hospital, watching how physicians responded to the new alert format. The response was immediate and positive. Physicians were engaging with the alerts differently, reading the reasoning, making more informed decisions. The dismissal rate dropped by 40%. And the woman at Phoenix Memorial pulled through. Significant cardiac damage, long recovery ahead, but alive. Noah got the call on Sunday morning. He was making breakfast with Ethan when his phone rang. Marcus on the other end. She's stable, out of ICU. Doctors say she's going to make a full recovery. Noah had to sit down. You're sure? I'm sure. I just talked to her attending. He also wanted me to tell you something. What? He said the new alert format is brilliant, showed him exactly what he missed the first time. He's been showing it to other attendings, explaining how it works. Says he'll never dismiss an alert again. After he hung up, Noah just sat there, staring at nothing. Dad? Ethan looked worried. You okay? Yeah, buddy, I'm good. Someone we were worried about is going to be okay. Because of your system? Sort of. It's complicated. Ethan came over, leaned against him. I'm glad you're helping people. Noah wrapped an arm around his son. Me too. By month 8, they had 35 hospitals live and running. The transparency update had become the new standard, and physician adoption rates were climbing. The system was catching an average of 15 critical cases per week across all sites. Noah kept his list updated. 63 lives. 63 people who'd gone home to their families. But the pace was still brutal. Even with boundaries in place, even with delegation working, the sheer volume of work was staggering. New hospitals onboarding every week, each with unique integration challenges, each requiring custom configuration and training. Linda Morrison, the clinical consultant who'd pushed back on the timeline at the beginning, approached Noah one afternoon. "I need to tell you something," she said. Noah braced himself. "What?" "I was wrong. About the timeline being impossible." She looked uncomfortable admitting it. "I thought we'd be drowning in failures by now. But you've actually pulled this off. The system works, the hospitals are adopting it, the quality hasn't suffered the way I expected. We've had close calls. Every project has close calls. The Phoenix case could have destroyed physician trust, but instead you turned it into a feature improvement that made the system better. That's really impressive leadership." Noah didn't know what to say. "Thanks. I'm saying this because I want you to know the clinical team is behind you. Whatever you need for the final push, we'll make it happen." The final push. They had 4 weeks left to hit the 9-month deadline. 5 more hospitals to onboard. It was achievable, but barely. Rachel cornered him the next day. "We have a decision to make about the adaptive learning module." "What kind of decision?" "It's good, but it's not great. It still requires manual tuning for edge cases. We could spend another month refining it, get it to truly autonomous adaptation, or we could ship what we have and iterate later." Noah knew what she was really asking: quality versus timeline. "What's your recommendation?" "Ship what we have. It's functional, it's better than nothing, and we can improve it in the field. Waiting for perfection means missing the deadline." "And if it causes problems?" "We handle them, same as we've been doing." Noah thought about Phoenix Memorial, about the close call that had almost derailed everything, about all the times they'd pushed updates that weren't quite ready and somehow made them work. "Ship it," he said. "You're sure?" "No, but ship it anyway." The last 5 hospitals came online in a blur. Boston, Atlanta, San Francisco, Houston, Miami. Each one brought its own challenges. Boston's legacy systems were ancient and nearly incompatible. Atlanta had physician resistance that required extra training. San Francisco demanded custom privacy protocols, but they got through it. On day 268, 3 days before the 9-month deadline, the final hospital went live. 40 hospitals, 12,000 beds, over 200,000 patient encounters processed. They'd actually done it. Adrienne called an all-hands meeting that afternoon. The entire team crammed into the war room, exhausted but buzzing with accomplishment. "I'm not going to give a long speech," Adrienne said. "You all know what you've achieved. 40 hospitals in 9 months. 81 confirmed lives saved. Hundreds more complications prevented. This system is now the standard of care at every hospital where it's deployed." She paused, looking around the room. "The board is authorizing expansion to 100 hospitals over the next year. We're also exploring international deployment. What you've built here isn't just a product. It's a fundamental shift in how medicine gets practiced." Applause broke out. Rachel was crying. Marcus looked like he might pass out from relief. Noah felt oddly detached from it all. He was proud, absolutely. But mostly, he felt tired. After the meeting, Adrienne pulled him aside again. "How are you holding up?" "I'm fine." "That's not what I asked." Noah considered lying, decided against it. "I'm exhausted, proud, but exhausted." "Take a week off, real time off. No laptop, no phone calls, nothing. We have the international expansion to plan. We have 50 other people who can start planning. You need to rest before you collapse." Her expression was firm. "That's not a suggestion. It's an order." Noah opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. "Okay, good. Go home. Spend time with your son. Sleep for 12 hours. Remember what it's like to be a person instead of a project director." He did exactly that. Went home, told Ethan they were taking a vacation week. They didn't go anywhere fancy, just stayed home, did normal things, went to the park, watched movies, built elaborate structures out of everything in the apartment. On the third day, Ethan asked, "Are you going to go back to working all the time? Probably going to be busy again, but not like before. I learned my lesson." "What lesson?" "That being your dad is more important than anything else I could be doing." Ethan smiled, small but genuine. "Good." The week passed too quickly. By the time Noah returned to the office, he felt almost human again. The team had made progress on the international expansion plans without him. The world hadn't collapsed in his absence. Maybe he really could delegate after all. Rachel greeted him with a stack of reports. "Welcome back. We missed you." "What'd I miss?" 3 new hospital requests, 2 partnership proposals, and 1 very interesting call from the Mayo Clinic. Mayo wants the system? Mayo wants to collaborate on expanding it. They're thinking cardiac arrest prediction, stroke prevention, sepsis detection. Basically everything we've been talking about doing eventually. Noah felt a spark of excitement. That's huge. I know. Adrienne wants us to put together a proposal. Think you're up for it? Yeah, I am. The Mayo Clinic partnership became Noah's focus for the next several weeks. It was challenging work, requiring him to think beyond what the Sentinel system currently did and imagine what it could become. Predictive medicine, not just reactive. Catching problems days before they manifested instead of hours. He worked with researchers at Mayo, brilliant people who pushed his thinking in new directions. They shared data, compared approaches, found synergies he hadn't anticipated. One of the researchers, Dr. Kenji Yamamoto, became a regular collaborator. "Your architecture is elegant," Kenji said during one video call, "but you're underutilizing the temporal data. If we restructure the learning algorithm to weight recent trends more heavily than absolute values, we could push the prediction window out significantly." "How significantly?" 48 hours for some conditions? Maybe more. Noah's mind raced. If we could predict cardiac events 2 days in advance, we could prevent them entirely in many cases. Adjust medications, modify treatment plans, intervene before the crisis. They worked through the mathematics together, building models, testing hypotheses. It was pure research again, the kind of work Noah had abandoned years ago, the kind of work he'd missed without realizing it. Adrienne noticed the change. "You're smiling more." "I am?" "You are. Like you're enjoying the work instead of just surviving it." Noah thought about that. "I think I forgot how much I love this, the actual science of it, not just the implementation and deployment, but the discovery." "Good. Hold on to that. It's what makes you effective." As the months progressed, the Sentinel system continued expanding. 60 hospitals, then 80, then 100. Each deployment was smoother than the last. The team had the process down to a science. The lives saved count kept climbing. 147, 203, 268. Each number represented a name Noah would never know, a family he'd never meet, a future he'd helped preserve. One evening, working late but not too late, Noah got an email that stopped him cold. It was from someone named Michael Chen. "Mr. Carter, you don't know me, but your system saved my wife's life. She was admitted to Mercy General 3 months ago for what seemed like a routine infection. Your system caught early sepsis markers that the medical team hadn't noticed yet. Because of that early detection, they started aggressive treatment immediately. The doctors told us that without that early catch, she probably wouldn't have made it. I just wanted to thank you. Our daughters still have their mother because of the work you do. I hope you know how much that matters." Noah read it 3 times, then had to step away from his desk. He walked to the window, looked out at the city lights, and let himself feel it. The weight and the wonder of it. He'd built something that mattered, something that made a real difference. When he got home that night, Ethan was already asleep. Noah stood in the doorway of his son's room, watching him breathe, feeling grateful in a way he hadn't in years. This kid had a father who was present, who came home for dinner most nights, who showed up to school events and helped with homework and was actually there. And Noah had work that gave his life meaning beyond just survival. It wasn't perfect. There were still hard days, still moments when he felt overwhelmed or inadequate or stretched too thin, but it was good. Better than he'd thought possible 2 years ago when he was drowning in grief and mediocrity. His phone buzzed, a text from Adrienne. "Board approved the Mayo partnership. Official announcement Monday." Noah typed back, "That's incredible. You did this. The system, the expansion, all of it. I hope you're proud. He thought about that. Pride had felt dangerous for so long, like something he didn't deserve, like acknowledging success meant forgetting Sarah. But maybe that wasn't true. Maybe he could be proud of what he'd built and still honor her memory. Maybe they weren't mutually exclusive. I am proud, he typed back. Thank you for taking a chance on me. Thank you for not giving up on yourself. The next morning, Noah took Ethan to school before heading to the office. His son chattered about a science project, about the solar system model they were building, about how Jupiter was his favorite planet because of the storm that never ended. Dad, do you think your system will ever work in space? Noah laughed. Probably not. You need hospitals for it to be useful. But what if there are space hospitals someday? Then maybe. Who knows? I think there will be, and I think you should make a space version. I'll keep that in mind, buddy. At the office, preparations were underway for the Mayo Clinic announcement. Press releases being drafted, presentations being prepared, interviews being scheduled. Noah had always hated the publicity side of things, but he understood it was necessary. Rachel found him reviewing the technical documentation. You ready for this to go public? Not really, but I don't think I have a choice. You could always hide and let Adrienne do all the talking. Tempting, the announcement went out Monday morning. Within hours, the story was everywhere. Medical journals, tech news sites, mainstream media. Revolutionary AI system expands to nation's top hospitals. Predictive medicine saves hundreds of lives. The future of healthcare is here. Noah's inbox exploded. Interview requests, speaking invitations, congratulatory messages from people he hadn't talked to in years. He ignored most of it, focused on the work. There was still so much to do. The Mayo partnership was just beginning. The international expansion was in early stages. The system itself still had room for improvement. But that evening, when he got home and Ethan asked how his day was, Noah said, "Good, really good." And he meant it. Later, after Ethan was asleep, Noah sat on the couch with a beer and pulled out his phone. He scrolled through old photos, found one of Sarah from their graduate school days. She was laughing at something, hair messy, wearing one of his old sweatshirts. "I did it," he said quietly to the photo. "I finished what we started, and I'm actually okay. We're okay." The photo didn't answer, obviously, but somehow saying it out loud felt important, like closing a chapter that had been left unfinished for too long. His phone buzzed, a message from his mom. "Saw the news. So proud of you, honey. Your dad would be proud too." Noah smiled. His father had died when he was in college, never got to see any of this. But his mom was right. He would have been proud. "Thanks, Mom. Come visit soon. Ethan misses you." "I'll be there next month. Love you." "Love you too." Noah set the phone down, finished his beer, and allowed himself a moment of quiet contentment. The work wasn't done. It would never be done. There would always be more hospitals to onboard, more features to develop, more lives to save. But for tonight, he could rest in the knowledge that he'd built something meaningful, that he was being the father Ethan needed, that he'd found a way to live with loss without being consumed by it. The apartment was quiet. Outside, the city hummed with its usual nighttime sounds. Somewhere out there, the Sentinel system was running in hospitals across the country, watching patients, catching problems, saving lives. And here, in this small apartment with mismatched furniture and toys scattered across the floor, Noah Carter was home. Actually, genuinely home. It was enough. 3 years after that first meeting in Adrienne's office, Noah stood in front of a room full of medical students at Stanford, the same university where he'd once abandoned his dreams. The irony wasn't lost on him. "The thing nobody tells you about building something that matters," he said, advancing to the next slide, "is that it doesn't fix you. It doesn't heal the broken parts or erase the losses. It just gives you something worth waking up for." The student scribbled notes. Noah had been reluctant to accept the speaking invitation, but Adrienne had insisted. "They need to hear from someone who actually failed before succeeding," she'd said. "Someone who's human." After the lecture, a young woman approached him. She had that particular exhaustion Noah recognized from his own graduate school days, the kind that came from pushing too hard for too long. "Dr. Carter, can I ask you something? I'm not a doctor, never finished my PhD. But you built the Sentinel system. You've saved hundreds of lives. Thousands now, actually, but yeah, what's your question? How did you start again after everything fell apart? I'm thinking about leaving my program and I need to know if it's possible to come back from that. Noah thought about the years after Sarah died, the numbness, the mediocrity, the feeling that he'd permanently broken something inside himself. You want the honest answer? She nodded. It's possible, but it's not clean. You don't just decide one day to be better and suddenly everything's fixed. You stumble through it. You make mistakes. You fail at the small stuff while trying to fix the big stuff. He paused. But yeah, it's possible. Just don't expect it to look like redemption. It looks more like learning to live with yourself again. The young woman thanked him and walked away. Noah hoped she'd actually heard what he said instead of just the encouraging parts. The Sentinel system now operated in 147 hospitals across 12 countries. The lives saved count had passed 4,000. The Mayo Clinic partnership had expanded the system into stroke prediction and sepsis detection, with cardiac arrest prevention and beta testing. It was bigger than Noah had ever imagined, also more complicated. He flew back from Stanford that evening, made it home in time to help Ethan with his algebra homework. His son was 10 now, growing faster than seemed possible, already talking about middle school and whether he wanted to play soccer or join the robotics team. I'm thinking robotics, Ethan said, erasing an equation for the third time. Because then I could build things like you do. I don't really build robots, buddy. You build smart computer things. That's basically robots. Noah smiled. Fair enough. Robotics sounds great. After homework and dinner, after Ethan was settled with a book, Noah's phone rang. Adrienne. We have a situation, she said without preamble. What kind of situation? The kind where a competing company just announced their own predictive medical AI. They're calling it MedGuard. Press release says it does everything Sentinel does, but faster and cheaper. Noah's stomach tightened. How much faster? They're claiming 2-second processing time versus our 5 seconds. And they're pricing 40% below our licensing fees. There's no way that's real. You can't get accurate predictions that fast without sacrificing sensitivity. I know that, you know that, but hospitals looking at their budgets don't know that. Adrienne's voice was tense. We need to respond. Fast. What are you thinking? Emergency meeting tomorrow morning. Bring Rachel and Marcus. We need to figure out if this is an actual threat or just vaporware. The meeting started at 7. Rachel had already pulled everything publicly available about MedGuard, press releases, technical white papers, the credentials of their development team. It's not vaporware, she said grimly. Their lead architect is Dr. James Peterson. He worked at IBM Watson Health for 6 years. He knows what he's doing. Marcus pulled up a comparison chart. They're targeting the same hospitals we are, and they're offering aggressive pilot programs. Free implementation for the first 3 months. We can't compete on price, Adrienne said. Our cost structure doesn't allow it. We need to compete on quality. Then we need data showing our system is actually better, Noah said. Head-to-head comparisons. Real outcomes, not theoretical performance metrics. That means clinical trials, Rachel said, which take time and money. Do we have another option? Silence. All right, Adrienne said. Set it up. 6-month trial. We'll run both systems in parallel at select hospitals, measure which one catches more cases, has fewer false positives, delivers better patient outcomes. That's risky, Marcus said. If their system performs comparably, we've just validated a cheaper competitor. And if we don't do it, hospitals will assume the cheaper option is good enough. At least this way, we're controlling the comparison. Noah spent the next week designing the trial protocol. Which hospitals, which metrics, how to ensure fair testing. It was exhausting work on top of everything else, but necessary. Ethan noticed the stress. You're working late again. I know, buddy. I'm sorry. There's some stuff at work that needs attention. Is it bad stuff? It's complicated stuff, but I'm handling it. Are you, though? Because you look tired like you did before. Noah was startled by his son's perceptiveness. I'm okay. I promise. This is different than before. How? Before, I was working because I didn't know what else to do. Now I'm working because I'm protecting something that matters. That's different. If you say so. But Ethan's skepticism stayed with Noah. Was this different? Or was he falling into the same patterns, just with better justification? He talked to Adrienne about it the next day. Ethan thinks I'm working too much again. Are you? I don't know, maybe, but this is a real crisis. If Medgard takes significant market share, the company will survive, Adrienne interrupted. We're well capitalized, we have strong hospital relationships, our system works. Even if we lose some market share, we'll be fine. Then why the emergency response? Because I don't like losing. But that doesn't mean you have to sacrifice your life to win. She leaned back in her chair. I've been thinking about something, about what happens when the mission consumes everything else. What do you mean? After Rebecca died, I told myself the work was honoring her memory, that building this system was the most important thing I could do. And maybe it was. But I also used it as an excuse not to deal with Emma, not to process my own grief, not to have a life beyond the office. And I'm watching you potentially make the same mistake. You've built something incredible, Noah. The system saves lives every day. But if maintaining it costs you your relationship with your son, what's the point? Noah didn't have an answer. The clinical trial launched in November. 6 hospitals, 3 running only Sentinel, 3 running both Sentinel and Medgard in parallel. The data would be independently analyzed by a team at Johns Hopkins. For 3 months, Noah obsessed over every data point, every alert, every outcome. Medgard was fast, he had to admit. Their 2-second processing time was real, but so was their 13% false positive rate, more than double Sentinel's 6%. Speed doesn't matter if doctors stop trusting the alerts, Rachel pointed out during one review session. Try telling that to hospital administrators looking at budget line items. By February, the data was becoming clear. Sentinel caught 8% more critical cases than Medgard. The false positive rate difference was even more pronounced in real-world use. Hospitals running both systems showed physicians ignoring Medgard alerts at nearly twice the rate of Sentinel alerts. The independent analysis confirmed what Noah already knew. Sentinel was better. Not marginally better, significantly better. The Johns Hopkins team published their findings in a major medical journal. The headline was perfect. Faster isn't better. Comparative analysis shows quality matters in predictive medical AI. Within a week, 3 hospitals that had been considering switching to Medgard renewed their Sentinel contracts. 2 new hospitals signed on. The competitive threat didn't disappear, but it became manageable. Noah allowed himself to relax for the first time in months. That's when Adrienne called him to her office with a proposal that changed everything. I'm stepping down as CEO, she said. Noah stared at her. What? Not immediately, 6 months from now. But I wanted to tell you first because I'm recommending you as my replacement. No, absolutely not. I'm not CEO material. Why not? Because I'm a scientist, not a business executive. I build systems. I don't run companies. You've been running the most critical division of this company for 3 years. You've managed teams, negotiated partnerships, presented to the board. What do you think CEO is? It's different. Noah struggled for words. I'd be terrible at it. You'd be different at it than I am, but not terrible. Adrienne's expression was calm. I'm not asking you to decide today. Think about it. Talk to your family. But I think you're ready for this, even if you don't. That night, Noah called his mother. CEO, she said, her voice a mix of pride and concern. That's wonderful, honey, but is it what you want? I don't know. Part of me thinks it's insane. Part of me wonders if I could actually do it. What does Ethan think? I haven't told him yet. I wanted to talk to you first. His mother was quiet for a moment. You know what I think? I think you've spent 3 years proving you can build something meaningful without losing yourself. Now you have to decide if you want to take it further or if you've done enough. What would you do? I'd ask myself if saying yes means sacrificing what matters. And if the answer is yes, I'd say no. But if you can do this and still be Ethan's dad, still have a life beyond work, then maybe it's worth considering. Noah talked to Ethan the next evening. They want me to be in charge of the whole company. Ethan looked up from his science homework. Like the boss of everything? Pretty much. Would you have to work more? Probably some. But I'd also have more control over my schedule. I could make sure I was home for the important stuff. Like what? Like dinner. and your robotics competitions, and whatever else you need me for. Ethan thought about this seriously. Would you be happy doing it? The question caught Noah off guard. I don't know. Maybe? Then you should try it, but if it makes you miserable like before, you should stop. Deal. Noah went to Adrian the next day. I'll do it, on one condition. What condition? I want to restructure how we handle work-life balance company-wide. Real policies, not just lip service. Required time off, limits on after-hours work, support for parents. If I'm going to run this company, I want it to be the kind of place where people can have lives. Adrian smiled, the first genuine smile he'd seen from her in years. That's exactly why you should be CEO, because you actually care about that stuff. The transition took 6 months. Noah spent the time learning the parts of the business he'd never touched: finance, legal, operations, investor relations. It was overwhelming and occasionally boring, but Adrian walked him through it with patience. You don't have to know everything, she said during one particularly frustrating finance review. You just have to know enough to ask smart questions and hire people who know more than you do. That's not very reassuring. It's realistic. Nobody who's good at this job knows everything. They just know how to build teams that collectively know everything. On Noah's first day as CEO, Ethan insisted on coming to the office. I want to see your new office, his son said. It was the same office Adrian had occupied. Noah had kept most of her furniture, just added a few personal touches. A photo of Ethan on his desk, the framed first alert from the Sentinel system, a whiteboard for sketching ideas. This is pretty cool, Dad, Ethan said, spinning in the massive chair. You're like a real boss now. I was a real boss before. Yeah, but now you're the biggest boss. Noah laughed. I guess I am. The first year as CEO was brutal. Noah made mistakes, hired wrong, trusted the wrong people, misread situations, but he also learned fast, adjusted quickly, and built a leadership team that covered his weaknesses. Rachel became Chief Technology Officer. Marcus took over operations. They brought in a CFO with 20 years of experience who taught Noah how to read financial statements without his eyes glazing over. The company grew. 200 hospitals, then 300. The Sentinel system expanded into new clinical areas: kidney failure prediction, medication interaction detection, post-surgical complication forecasting. The lives saved count passed 10,000. Noah kept the list, even though it was too long to read through anymore. 10,000 people who'd gone home to their families. 10,000 futures that had been preserved. It still felt impossible that work he'd started in a coffee shop as a desperate graduate student had grown into this. Emma, Adrian's niece, came to visit one summer. She was 17 now, thinking about colleges, considering pre-med. Aunt Adrian talks about you a lot, Emma said over lunch. Says you're doing a good job. That's generous of her. She also says you remind her of my mom, the way you care about people, not just systems. Noah didn't know what to say to that. I never met your mom. I know, but Aunt Adrian says the system you built is what my mom would have wanted, something that actually helps people instead of just making money. We make money too, Noah said with a slight smile. Yeah, but that's not why you do it. That's what matters. Ethan and Emma got along well. They spent the afternoon talking about science and medicine and what it meant to build things that mattered. Watching them, Noah thought about the future, about the legacy that extended beyond just the system itself. This was what Sarah would have wanted, he realized. Not just the lives saved, but the example set. The idea that work could be meaningful without consuming everything else. That evening, Adrian stopped by Noah's office. Emma's having a good time, she said. Ethan too. They're good kids. They are. Adrian sat down. I wanted to thank you. For what? For finishing what we started. For making it better than I could have alone. For proving that you don't have to sacrifice everything to build something important. I learned that from you. Eventually. We learned it together. She paused. I'm proud of you, Noah. Not just the CEO stuff, but the whole journey. The way you came back from loss and built a life that actually works. It doesn't always work. I still have bad days. Days when I miss Sarah so much I can barely function. Days when I feel like I'm failing at everything. But you keep going anyway, that's what counts. After she left, Noah sat alone in his office, looking out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, the Sentinel system was running in hundreds of hospitals, watching patients, catching problems, saving lives. And here, in this office, Noah Carter, the man who'd almost lost everything, who'd rebuilt himself piece by piece, was leading the company that made it all possible. It wasn't a redemption story. Redemption implied you'd fixed everything, made it all okay again. Sarah was still gone. That loss would always be there, but it was a story about learning to live with loss, about finding meaning in the aftermath, about building something that mattered while still being present for the people who needed you. 5 years after becoming CEO, Noah stood on a stage in Geneva, accepting an award for innovation in healthcare. Ethan was in the audience, 13 years old now, looking bored but proud in the way teenagers do. In his acceptance speech, Noah talked about Sarah, about the loss that had driven him to create the system, about the thousands of people who'd been saved because he'd refused to let that loss be meaningless. But the real victory, he said, looking at Ethan, isn't the technology or the lives saved or the awards. It's that I get to go home tonight to my son, that I'm building a future instead of just mourning the past. That's the win. The audience applauded. Ethan rolled his eyes, but Noah could see him smiling. After the ceremony, they walked through the city together. That was a pretty good speech, Dad. Just pretty good? It was a little sappy, but good. Noah laughed. I'll work on being less sappy. Don't. It's kind of your thing. Ethan paused. Do you still miss Mom? Every single day. Me too. But I'm glad we're okay now. Like, actually okay. Me too, buddy. They walked in comfortable silence for a while. Dad? Yeah? I think I want to study medicine, like actually become a doctor. Noah felt his throat tighten. Yeah? Yeah. Because of what you built. The way it helps people. I want to be part of that. Not the computer stuff necessarily, but the helping people part. Your mom would be so proud of that. What about you? I'm already proud of you, but yeah, that would be amazing. Years continued to pass. The Sentinel system evolved, improved, expanded into areas Noah had never imagined. Ethan went to college, then medical school. Started his residency at the same hospital where the first Sentinel alert had saved Jennifer's life all those years ago. Noah stepped back from day-to-day operations eventually, moved into an advisory role, spent more time on research, on pushing the boundaries of what predictive medicine could do. Adrienne retired to Seattle, spent time with Emma and her family. They stayed in touch, occasional dinners when Noah was in town, emails sharing articles and ideas. We did something good, she said during one visit, something that lasted. We did. No regrets? Noah thought about the question honestly. The years of struggle, the sacrifices, the moments when he'd almost given up. No regrets? It was hard, but it was worth it. On the 10th anniversary of the Sentinel system's first deployment, Noah stood in the original lab where he'd first seen his old research rebuilt. The room looked different now, newer equipment, different team, but the fundamental purpose remained the same. Rachel found him there. Getting nostalgic? A little, thinking about how far we've come. 38,000 lives saved at last count, operating in 42 countries, training systems for diseases we hadn't even considered when we started. And it all began because Adrienne took a chance on a burned-out data analyst who'd given up on himself. She saw something in you that you didn't see in yourself. Yeah, she did. They stood there quietly, watching the monitors display real-time data from hospitals around the world. Alerts firing, problems being caught, lives being saved. You know what the best part is? Rachel said. What? You actually get to enjoy it. You're not killing yourself anymore. You have a life. That's the real victory. She was right. Noah had learned the hardest lesson, that you could build something meaningful without destroying yourself in the process. That success didn't require sacrifice of everything else. That being present for the small moments mattered as much as the big achievements. That evening, Noah had dinner with Ethan, who was visiting from his residency. Patient came in today, Ethan said. 40-year-old guy, chest pain, classic presentation for cardiac event. But the Sentinel system flagged something else. Early-stage lung mass we never would have seen otherwise. Caught it before symptoms, before it spread. He's going to be fine. That's what it's for. I know, but it hit different because it's your system. Like, I get to see firsthand the thing you built actually working, saving people. Noah smiled. That never gets old. Does it ever feel like enough? Like you've done what you set out to do? Sometimes. Other times I see all the things we haven't solved yet and think we're just getting started. Noah paused. But yeah, when I hear stories like yours, it feels like enough. They finished dinner talking about Ethan's cases, about medicine and technology and the future of healthcare, about the legacy that extended beyond just one system or one company. Later, alone in his apartment, Noah pulled out an old photo of Sarah, the same one he'd looked at years ago when he'd first told her he'd finished what they started. We're at 10 years now, he said quietly. 38,000 lives. Ethan's becoming a doctor. The work continues. The photo didn't answer, but Noah didn't need it to. He'd found his own answers over the years, found a way to live with loss that didn't require forgetting or moving on, just incorporating it into who he'd become. Sarah's death had broken him, but in rebuilding himself, he'd built something that mattered, not as compensation or redemption, just as proof that life could still have meaning after devastating loss. He'd learned that you didn't have to choose between honoring the past and building a future, that being a good father and doing meaningful work weren't mutually exclusive, that success was possible without sacrificing everything. Most importantly, he'd learned that being broken didn't mean being finished. Sometimes the broken pieces, when reassembled, created something stronger than what existed before. Noah set the photo down and looked around his apartment. It was bigger now, in a better neighborhood, but it still had Ethan's artwork on the walls, still felt like home. Tomorrow, he'd go to the office and work on the next evolution of the Sentinel system. Next week, he'd attend Ethan's medical school graduation. Next month, he'd speak at a conference about the future of predictive medicine. But tonight, he was just Noah, a man who'd lost everything and found a way to build a life anyway, a father who'd learned to be present, a scientist who'd turned grief into purpose. It wasn't a perfect story. There were still hard days, still moments of doubt and fear and overwhelming sadness, but it was his story. And for the first time in years, Noah was genuinely proud of how it was turning out. Outside, the city hummed with its endless rhythm. Somewhere, a hospital alert was firing, a doctor was responding, a life was being saved. The system he'd built, the thing he'd created from loss and determination and stubborn refusal to stay broken, was doing exactly what it was designed to do. And that, Noah thought, was more than enough.